Hello everyone, welcome to the Fantasy Football Scout Euro 2020 first video. I'm Az from Fantasy Scout, and this is my first proper year playing a international tournament fantasy game. So I thought I'd do a video on the rules because the game is slightly different to the normal Fantasy Premier League game, and there's a lot more sort of management involved in this. So it's really important before you go into the tournament that you understand how the game works and all of those things. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the rules on the website, break them down one by one. I've got a couple of screens on just some kind of mistakes that you might make and kind of what to avoid and things like that, just to make sure that you've got the best team possible going into the tournament. So let's start from the beginning. So firstly, the overview. I mean, this is all pretty much similar to Fantasy Premier League, assuming most of you who watch this play that already. So essentially what Fantasy Football is you pick a team of players and they get points based on how they perform in the tournament. There's things called match days, which are essentially game weeks. So Euro 2020 works by the different match days that go on. 7 match days in total, 3 rounds of games in the group stages, the round of 16, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and finals. So just like in normal fantasy football, you set your team up for each one of the match days, and then you kind of go from there. So you just got to make sure that you have your team ready by the deadline of the next week. So when you're picking your squad, it's exactly the same, I think, as the Premier League. You've got 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 3 forwards. The game's a little bit different in the sense of some of the player classifications. So in the Premier League, players like Salah, Hazard, for example, would probably be classed as midfielders. There's a bit of controversy over things like that. In this game, a lot of those kind of attacking winger type players are forwards. So actually the pool of the forwards, I think, are a really key position to kind of get right to make sure you get points. The midfielders get more points for things like goals, but they're kind of a little bit harder to pick right. So, you know, it's kind of, the Premier League gets slated a little bit sometimes because they have, so many of these attacking players as midfielders, and this is kind of the reverse of that. So just bear that in mind. In terms of your budget, you've got 100 million to spend. That'll be pretty similar. It's euros this time, not pounds. You get a little bit extra when you go on to the knockouts. So you get an extra 5 million when you go into that. Logic behind that just being that there's probably going to be better teams left, and you're going to need more money to make sure you can actually get a squad together, because you might in the early stages have lower price players from some of the lesser ranked nations. So the more premium picks go up. So that's all pretty simple. I don't think there's not much more that you need to know with that kind of thing. So the number of players per team, now this is a little bit different. So at the start, it's the same as probably what you're used to. Maximum of 3 players per team. As you move into the knockouts, this increases because there's less teams. Makes sense. So for the round of 16, you can have up to 4, quarterfinals up to 5, semi-finals up to 6, and for the finals, you can pick 8. So you can't just go all England if we make it to the final. You've got to have a couple of the opposition, whoever we're against. I'm not biased at all, honestly. So in terms of managing your squad, you select 11 players. That's exactly the same. Save your team for each match day deadline, as I said. And there's automatic substitutes. We're going to come to that in a little bit more detail because it's not quite the same as the Premier League. There's a bit more stuff in depth to go with that. Formations, you can play any formation you like, but you've got to have a goalkeeper. You've got to have 3 defenders. You've got to have 2 midfielders and at least 1 forward. So as long as if you don't make any moves during a week, as we're going to talk about, you get automatic subs coming in as long as they fit that formation. Easy. All so simple so far. Deadlines. So these are the game weeks. So these are the things to put into your calendar, make a note for yourself, set alarms, reminders, all this kind of stuff. I'm guilty. I have kind of dipped my toes into these before, never really taken it that seriously. This is the first one I'm really going to try to do well in. I've missed deadlines, all this kind of stuff. So there is a lot more manual managing in this game, but you want to make sure at least that you have your stuff done by these deadlines. So make a note of these. Match day 1, 11th of June. Match day 2, 16th of June. Match day 3, 20th of June. So last 16, 26th of June, quarterfinals, 2nd of July, semi-finals, 6th of July, and the final, of course, is on the 11th of July. So just whack a Google Calendar notification in, say, Alexa, set me a reminder of these, whatever. Just make sure you hit these deadlines. Right, so we're going to move into where it gets a little bit more interesting now. So captains on paper work exactly the same as FPL. You save your team, you pick a captain, they get double points. Easy. Now, this is where it starts getting a little bit different. So because the game works in terms of match days, the games are spread over the match day on different days. So it's similar in a way to the Premier League, but with the Premier League, once your team is locked in, that's it. You can't make any changes. With this, and I think the Champions League game and other kind of international tournament games they actually let you make changes as a match day is playing out. So essentially what that means is if you captain a player on the first day of the match day and they blank, you can change that captain onto another player who's playing in that same week. So this is like really, really key, because you don't want to just set a captain to who you think is the best player for that entire match week, because they might be playing on the final day and you might actually have got a big haul if you'd captained a player who was playing before. So I'm going to show you that in a bit more detail in a second. But essentially what this means is when you look at people's teams and you're wondering why they've captained Italy defenders or the Turkey goalkeeper, for example, it's because there's no reason why you can't roll the dice on that before you then pick, Harry Kane or Lukaku later on in the week. So it's really key to know when the games are being played so that you can pick your captain around that and make sure you're going early on a captain, and then you can change it if that player, doesn't come in. If your captain doesn't play and you haven't made any subs on that match day, your captain will be automatically subbed out, but your captain, the replacement, doesn't get double points, which is interesting. If your captain doesn't play on a match day where you've made other substitutions, your captain won't be subbed out and none of your players will score double. So essentially what that means is if you make any changes to making subs, which we're going to mention in a second, or if you're an active manager, you basically don't benefit from any other players getting on the pitch. So the vice captain stuff is very, very unlikely. Well, I don't even think there is a vice captain, because you won't get any points if you're captain, if you have made up other things. So it's better in a way. You can actually pick your captain a bit more, and you don't just get lucky with vice captain points, which sort of splits the community a little bit. I hate vice captains in FPL. So subs. So this is essentially similar to the captains thing. So between match days, you can make as many subs within your squad as you like. After all matches on a single day have finished and before the next matches within that match day, you can sub out a maximum of 4 players, unless they've been subbed off, and replace them with any of your substitutes whose teams are yet to play within the match day. You can also change your captain to another player from your squad, as we just mentioned. Bear in mind, once you confirm your subs or change of captain, they cannot be reversed. Once the games of the final day of the match day have kicked off, you can't make any more changes to your team. Once you've made manual substitutions or changed your captain within a match day, if any of your starting 11 don't play, they won't be automatically subbed out. So this is really interesting. So this is the same as the captain, essentially. What you want to do is you want to set your team up to have the players playing who play earlier in the match day. And for some of you, this is going to be really obvious, and I'm sorry if you know this, you're going, yes, we know this. I didn't know this. When I first set my team up, I set my team up as a kind of what was described to me as a good zombie team, but not necessarily a good team for this tournament. So your subs and your captain are kind of your captain needs to be playing early. So the first game, and your subs need to be playing late, because then that gives you the biggest chance to see who's got the least points that I can sub out and bring in for one of these players playing later in the week. So this is the first match week, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So the first game is on Friday the 11th of June, and it's Turkey v Italy. So you want to make sure that you're playing all of your Turkish and Italian players, because If they don't perform, you can sub them out for any other players you've got on your squad and on your bench later on. You want to essentially try your best to build your squad around these match weeks to make sure that you've got subs who are playing later on in the week that can come on earlier in the week. It's also a good idea to try and make sure that you've got different captains that you can bring on playing on different weeks. So if you've got all of your players, for example, playing in teams in these two groups, you can't then benefit from, if they all blank, from getting a captain in one of these. So making sure that your squad is kind of optimally set up across the match week is really important. So here's an example of a team that I just set up quite quickly. So this is very similar to a team that I put together without these kind of match weeks or things in mind. So I've got Harry Kane captain, Lukaku, Depay, Ferran Torres, Kimmich, Kante, Alaba, Florenzi, Diaz, Cancelo, Patricio. And on my bench, I've got Kaki, Rodon, Torres, and Højbjerg. So this is, if you look down the bottom, there's three filters that you can use: price, fixtures, and date. So this was just me setting this up. Fixtures, that's it. This is the team that I kind of put together. What I haven't taken into account at all are when the games are being played. So when I actually thought about this in a bit more detail, I changed things around. I set the filter to date, and now suddenly I realise, okay, well, there's no point in me playing Patricio, Diaz, Cancelo, and Kante because they all play on the final day of the game week. So if Kaki, for example, concedes to Italy, I can just sub him up for Patricio, who's going to play later on. The same with Diaz, Cancelo, Kante. I can bring those players all on if I have players in my squad who have blanked. You notice that I've got Florenzi captain. That's because he plays on the 11th of June. There's no point in me putting it on Harry Kane because he plays on the 13th. So it's the same. He would have the same match week as Lukaku, for example. So I couldn't change from Kane to Lukaku. I think that's right. Let me just check. Oh no, I could change from Lukaku to Kane. So yeah, so you've got to be careful. If you've got two players that you've got your eye on for the captain, they need to be playing on different days. So Kane and Lukaku will be fine. So I can essentially move from Florenzi to Lukaku and then over to Kane if I wanted to. So sorting by date, I think, gives you the best chance to make sure your team is kind of optimally set up for the week ahead. We kind of mentioned briefly about auto subs, but just to be really clear, once you start making these manual changes, so once you start making changes to your captains or your bench or anything like that, you then don't get the automatic substitutions coming in. Transfers. So transfers work differently to, sort of similarly to FPL, but also different because it's a completely different style of tournament. So essentially, I like the first one. Transferring players in and out of your squad helps you get more points throughout the tournament. Yeah, you'd hope so. It doesn't always work out like that. But you can make as many transfers going into the tournament as you want, which is fine. You get free transfers every match day, and that depends on the different stages. So before the tournament starts, unlimited. During the group stage, you get 2 free transfers per match day. So once the tournament starts and you're setting up a team for game week 2, you can make 2 free transfers. You can then make another two free transfers for the week after. So once the group stages end and the round 16 begins, you get unlimited again. So you basically get another wildcard to sort your team out and do what you want with it. After that's done, though, that's when things start getting a bit tricky. So before the quarterfinals, you only get 3. So essentially, if you use these unlimited transfers and you build a team of players who all get knocked out, you've only got 3 transfers to then rectify that. So it's tricky to get that right, but there are some chips and stuff that can help you later on. But that's the one that worries me the most about this, is making sure that I've got a good enough team going into the quarterfinals. Because once you've got 5 transfers, that's half your team that you can change out. But it's that quarterfinals one that you really need to watch. The other thing here is if you don't use your free transfers, you're able to carry 1 forward to the next match day. So you can't keep you can't keep stockpiling them. But if you forget to do a transfer, or if you only do 1, then you get an extra 1 for the next week, which is pretty generous. Chips. So there's 2 chips in this tournament. You'll be very familiar with the Wildcard. The Wildcard gives you the chance to change your squad as much as you like. You can play it, you can make unlimited free transfers, and those transfers stay in your squad. Simple. Normal rules for automatic substitutions, manual substitutions, all stays the same. It essentially just lets you completely revamp your squad kind of whenever you want to. To play it, you just select activate wildcard and confirm transfers, and you won't take all the points hits that come with if you make extra transfers, apart from the free ones that they give you, which is 4 points, same as FPL. Now the other chip is Limitless. Now Limitless gives you the chance to change your squad for one match day only, so essentially a free hit, but it's better than a free hit because you get to bring in whoever you want, which is really nice. So if you want Kane, Lukaku, Depay, Pogba, Hazard, all the most expensive players, you can just bring them all in and just completely go for it. So to me, straight away, I'm thinking, how can I get the most out of this chip? Because this is the one where, in theory, you should have the biggest week of the whole tournament. It's got to be used in the group stage, right? To me, it's got to be game week 2, and we'll talk about it in a second. To play it, just select activate Limitless, confirm the transfers. You can use it once. So again, going back to the deadlines now. To me, it's pretty obvious where these chips should be used. I'm sure there'll be some alternative strategies, and I'm sure people will talk about it. But for me, you set your team up for match day 1, you then play the Limitless chip and just go all out broke for match day 2. When you've set your team up for game week 1, also have in mind that you're going to get these players back in for game week 3. So instead of just looking at game week 1, make sure you've got in a squad that also has a decent fixture in game week 3 as well. The reason for that is, I mean, the group stages should contain the weakest teams. So, you know, teams like Hungary, North Macedonia, Finland, Switzerland, like, you know, they're teams that could do well, and I'm, you know, I don't want to bash any of the lower ranked teams, but they're teams for fantasy that you really want to be targeting. So once you get out of the group stages, a lot of those teams are going to go because they're going to be rubbish. They're going to have got knocked out. So I think the Limitless has to be played in one of these 3 weeks. It's either 2 or 3. I think it's just easier to set your team up with 1 and 3 in mind, and then bring in the Limitless. You could wildcard here as well, but I just think the biggest risk here is going into the quarterfinals with a kind of a squad of players who have been knocked out. So for me, I want to be playing the wildcard after the you get unlimited transfers going into the round of 16, and then I want to be wildcarding out of that into a team. So that really lets me target the best teams in that round of 16, not really worrying about whether they go through or not, but trying to get the best fixtures, assuming they will. But if they don't, then I've still got the way of getting out of it as well. So that'll definitely be my strategy. Target match day 1 and 3, and then Limitless in 2. Scoring's pretty similar to FPL. There's a couple of changes. One that isn't mentioned here is you don't get an assist if a player just goes on a mazy run and just smashes it in. So, you know, in this tournament, if your player gives the ball to someone on the halfway line and they run down the length of the pitch and smash it in, you're not going to get that dodgy assist that we all complain about in FPL. So I quite like that rule, to be fair. Some of the other rules here, some of the ways to score points, there's a few different ones. So you get an extra point if they score outside the box, which is nice. So your long range specialists can do quite well if they get an extra goal, if they get an extra point for a goal. I'm not sure how useful that is, seeing as not that many goals get scored from outside the box, especially in a tournament like this, but you know, it might help. What I do find really interesting here is the winning and conceding a penalty. So if your player wins a penalty, even if it's missed, they still get 2 points, which is nice. And if they concede a penalty, they lose a point, even if it's missed. So I quite like those rules. It's just a couple of extra ways of getting points. Everything else is essentially the same. Forwards get the least points for a goal, but they are the most attacking players, especially in this game. Midfielders, get 5 and a clean sheet, but I would say starting with 3 strikers is probably going to be a priority for most people. And that's it. I think that's the kind of main stuff covered. If you've got any questions about any of this, then give me a shout at @FFScout_as. Fantasy Scout, I've got articles coming out on all the teams, all the groups. I'm going to be doing videos all of this week on the group previews as well. Really looking forward to starting this tournament and hopefully doing quite well for a change. I feel ready to go. I feel really up for this tournament. Hopefully everyone listening to this is as well. So yeah, it'd be great to talk about this stuff with you, and see you on site and on Twitter.